Welcome to Daily Dose of Knowledge. There are 3 personality types that researchers have identified as uniquely dangerous: not violent, not visibly broken. Often charming, successful, and impossible to read until the damage is already done. Subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Understanding this will change how you see certain people forever. They are called the Dark Triad, 3 distinct personality constructs that cluster together with disturbing frequency. Narcissism, Machiavellianism, Psychopathy, each one dangerous alone. Together they form something the research community has spent decades trying to fully understand. The term was coined by psychologists Delroy, Paul Hiss and Kevin Williams in 2002. They identified these 3 traits as sharing a common core, a callous, self-serving orientation toward other people. What unites them is not what they feel. It is what they do not feel. Empathy, guilt, genuine concern for the harm they cause. These are not monsters in the clinical sense. Most of them will never commit a crime. They operate entirely within the boundaries of what society permits. And that is precisely what makes them dangerous. Let us start with narcissism, because it is the most familiar and the most frequently misunderstood component. In the Dark Triad context, narcissism refers specifically to grandiosity, entitlement, and the relentless need for admiration. The Dark Triad narcissist is not the wounded, fragile type driven by hidden shame. This variant is marked by genuine superiority, or at least an unshakable belief in it. They expect deference. They expect exceptions. They expect the rules that govern other people not to apply to them. And when those expectations are not met, the response is disproportionate, cold, often designed to punish. In the Dark Triad configuration, narcissism provides the motive, the belief that one deserves more and is justified in taking it. Now let us talk about Machiavellianism. Named after Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance political philosopher whose writings advised rulers to prioritize power over morality, the Machiavellian personality is defined by strategic manipulation, long-term planning, the willingness to deceive, exploit, and use people as instruments toward personal ends. Where the narcissist wants admiration, the Machiavellian wants control. They are patient in a way most people are not. They will invest months or years building a relationship specifically to use it at a strategically optimal moment. They do not lose their temper. They do not reveal their intentions. They present exactly what each person needs to see in order to be useful. The Machiavellian reads people with precision. Not to connect with them, to find the lever, the vulnerability, the thing that can be pressed when necessary. In professional environments, Machiavellian individuals often rise quickly. They are skilled at impression management, alliance building, and positioning themselves advantageously. They leave behind a specific kind of damage. Not the explosive damage of overt cruelty. The quiet damage of someone who used you completely and felt nothing about it. Now let us talk about psychopathy, the most clinically studied and the most misrepresented of the 3. Psychopathy in the Dark Triad context does not mean serial killer. It means a specific constellation of traits: impulsivity, thrill-seeking, shallow affect, and a fundamental absence of remorse. The psychopathic individual does not feel guilt after causing harm, not suppressed guilt, not rationalized guilt. An absence where guilt should be. Research using brain imaging has shown that psychopaths process emotional information differently. The amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center, shows reduced activation in response to distress in others. They can identify that someone is in pain. They cannot feel why that should matter. This is the critical distinction. Psychopathy is not a choice not to care. It is a neurological condition in which caring, as most people experience it, is simply not available. In the Dark Triad configuration, psychopathy provides the immunity, the ability to cause harm without the internal friction that stops most people. Most people are constrained not by law but by conscience. The psychopathic individual in the Dark Triad is not constrained by either. Now let us talk about how these 3 traits interact when they appear together. Because the combination produces something qualitatively different from any single component. The narcissism provides the motive, superiority, and entitlement. The Machiavellianism provides the method, patience, strategy, and the willingness to manipulate. The psychopathy provides the absence of brakes, no guilt, no remorse, no internal cost to the harm caused. Together they produce an individual who believes they deserve more than others, knows how to take it, and feels nothing about the damage left behind. Research has found dark triad traits significantly overrepresented in certain environments. Corporate leadership, politics, high-stakes financial sectors. Not because these fields attract dark personalities exclusively. Because the traits that make a person dangerous also make them effective in competitive, high-reward environments. Confidence reads as competence. Ruthlessness reads as decisiveness. The absence of guilt reads as strength under pressure. The same traits that destroy personal relationships often accelerate professional ascent. This is one of the most uncomfortable findings in the research. Dark triad individuals are also significantly overrepresented in short-term mating success. Studies have found they attract partners at above-average rates, particularly in early stages of relationships. The confidence, the charm, the strategic attentiveness of the early stages, these are genuinely compelling. The cost reveals itself later. By the time the pattern is visible, the attachment is already formed. The damage has already begun. Now let us talk about how you recognize these traits in real life. Because the research is only useful if it translates to pattern recognition. The dark triad individual rarely announces themselves. They present as functional, often impressive. The signals are subtle and easy to rationalize away. One of the most consistent markers is the reaction to accountability. When confronted with the impact of their behavior, the dark triad individual does not respond with genuine remorse. They respond with deflection, counter-accusation, a reframing of events that positions them as the victim or the reasonable party. The apology, when it comes, is instrumental, designed to end the confrontation, not to acknowledge the harm. Another consistent marker is the treatment of people who are no longer useful. The dark triad individual's regard for others is fundamentally transactional. When someone stops being a source of supply, status, or strategic value, the warmth disappears, completely, without transition or apparent difficulty. This is one of the most reliable signals. Most people struggle to switch off care for someone they were close to. The dark triad individual does not struggle. There is nothing to switch off. A third marker is the pattern across relationships over time. One difficult relationship is a data point. A consistent pattern of people who felt used, diminished, or discarded is a profile. The dark triad individual typically has a history. If you can access it. Now let us talk about what it is like to be in a relationship, personal or professional, with a dark triad individual. The early experience is often exceptional, the attention, the apparent insight into who you are, the sense of being genuinely valued. This is not accidental. Dark triad individuals are skilled at the early stages of relationships precisely because they have no emotional investment in them. They are performing without the interference of real feeling, and the performance is often flawless. As the relationship progresses, the mask develops inconsistencies. Small moments of coldness that do not fit the presented self. Reactions that seem disproportionate. The target typically rationalizes these, attributes them to stress or history or something they themselves did wrong. By the time the pattern is undeniable, the target has often reorganized significant portions of their life around the relationship. Recovery from a dark triad relationship is complicated by a specific feature. The target often cannot fully believe what happened. The person they knew at the beginning felt real. The connection felt genuine. And it is extremely difficult to accept that someone can perform intimacy that convincingly without feeling any of it. But the research is clear. The performance was the point. The intimacy was the tool. Now let us talk about the question most people ask once they understand the dark triad. Can these people change? The honest answer is, rarely, and not through the effort of the people around them. Narcissistic traits can soften with age and sustained consequence. Machiavellian behavior can be constrained by environment and incentive structure. Psychopathy, the neurological substrate of the triad, does not respond to therapy in the conventional sense. The research on psychopathy treatment is not encouraging. What does change outcomes is structure. External accountability. Environments where the costs of dark triad behavior consistently outweigh the benefits. In the absence of those structures, the behavior continues. Because there is no internal mechanism producing the desire to stop. The most useful knowledge the research provides is not how to fix these individuals. It is how to recognize them early enough to protect yourself. Pay attention to how someone treats people who can do nothing for them. Pay attention to how they respond when held accountable. Pay attention to what happens to people after they leave this person's orbit. The pattern is always there if you look for it before you are already inside it. The Dark Triad is not a judgment. It is a clinical description of a specific configuration of traits that the research consistently links to harm. Understanding it does not make you cynical. It makes you accurate. And accuracy in this particular domain is protection. If this gave you something real, subscribe to Daily Dose of Knowledge. Drop a comment with which trait you found most unsettling. Explore our videos on psychology, human behavior, self-help, science, history, relationships, and the forces shaping modern life. There is always something here that will shift the way you think.